Dead America. Tales from Las Vegas, The Stadium, by Derek Slayton. Chapter 1. Nellis Air Force Base, Northeast Las Vegas. 1:13 a.m. Captain Mike Thompson stared at the coffee maker as the black liquid gold slowly dripped down from the filter. A deep scar ran down the right side of his face, a gift from an IED that took out his convoy over in the sandbox. Despite the souvenir from one of his multiple deployments, his mid-30s youthful appearance still came through. The coffee maker sputtered, the dripping slowing to a crawl. Thompson let out a frustrated sigh, giving the machine a rattling shake. "I swear to God, I will take you outside and put a bullet in you," he muttered. A light chuckle came from the doorway of the small kitchen. Thompson turned to spot Sergeant Daniel Brooks standing in the doorway. He was a few years younger than the captain and a few inches shorter, but he never passed up an opportunity to poke fun at his friend. "Do you need some backup, Captain?" Brooks asked. "Morning, Brooks," Thompson replied. "I mean, I can be your lookout while you do the deed," Brooks continued with a grin. "Or, if you really want to show it who's the boss, I can run down to maintenance and grab a car battery and some jumper cables. Really put the juice to him." "Are you done, Sergeant?" Thompson asked. Thompson contemplated for a moment before getting a grin on his face, but Brooks wasn't finished. "I think I have some electrical tape in my gear. We can tape over the clock there, pretend it's a blindfold before you put it out of its misery," Brooks said. Thompson stared at his sergeant for a moment, not exactly wishing ill will upon the man, but certainly wasn't thinking about anything positive. Finally, Brooks put his hands up in defeat. All right, I'm done," he said. Brooks walked over, giving the coffee maker a good look, before deftly smacking it on the side. In an instant, the flow regulated and coffee began filling the pot. Thompson stared at his friend for a moment, who responded with a shrug. "Hey, when you're good, Brooks said. Thompson let out a sigh, pointing to a stack of paper cups on the other counter. "Grab us a couple of those because we got to get moving," he said. "Any idea what this early wake-up call is about?" Brooks asked. "No clue," Thompson replied. "But I swear if it's for another drill, I'm gonna smack somebody." "I definitely have your back on that," Brooks said. The two men shared a laugh as Thompson poured them both a cup of coffee. As the two men began to exit the kitchen, a nervous-looking soldier came running up. "Captain Thompson? Are you Captain Thompson?" the soldier asked. "That's me, Private," Thompson replied. "Oh, thank God," the soldier said. "What's the problem?" Thompson asked. "General Morrison sent me out looking for you," the soldier explained. "He needs you in his office now." The captain and sergeant exchanged a worried look, as a general needing to see them in the middle of the night was never a good sign. Both of them snapped into business mode, turning back to the private. "All right, soldier, get us there," Thompson said. The soldier nodded before turning and moving quickly down the hallway, the two others following him. Waiting for them outside was a Jeep with a driver sitting behind the wheel. The private rushed to the passenger seat, looking back to the others who were taking their time. "I'm sorry, sir, but can you please hurry?" the private asked. "You're not the only people I have to find." Normally, Captain Thompson would have forcefully explained to the private why he can't talk to officers in that manner, but the hint of terror in his voice made him put the issue aside. "Of course, Private," Thompson said. The two soldiers got into the Jeep, which quickly sped across the base. As they went, both men looked out the windows, seeing that despite the early hour, the base was highly active. Not just troops moving about, civilians who lived on base were being moved as well. Most of them were still in their nighttime attire, confusing the soldiers even more. Families hustled with hastily packed bags, children clutching stuffed animals as their parents carried them to waiting vehicles. The usual order of military life had been replaced with controlled chaos. "Private, what in the hell is going on?" Thompson asked. "Captain, you're going to have to ask the general that," the soldier replied. "Apparently it's on a need-to-know basis, and I don't need to know." The two longtime friends exchanged another worried glance, not sure of what to make of the cryptic nature of the private's words. Whatever was going on wasn't good, and seemingly was getting worse by the minute. Thompson had seen enough emergency situations during his deployments to recognize the signs. This wasn't a drill or a standard alert. This was the real deal. After a short drive, the Jeep pulled up beside a small office building. The private turned around, speaking quickly as if to get the soldiers out of his vehicle. "The general is in there," he said. "Good luck." "You too, Private," Thompson said. As soon as the soldiers were clear of the jeep, it accelerated quickly, vanishing around the side of a building. Thompson watched it disappear, his gut telling him that whatever they were walking into was going to change everything. Well, that's not ominous or anything, Brooks said. Come on, let's go find out what's going on, Thompson replied. The captain and sergeant walked into the building, seeing soldiers and civilian workers scurrying around. Some worked the radios, others worked with maps and computers. It caught the men off guard, because even during the daytime, it was never that busy on base. The air was thick with tension and urgency. Radio chatter filled the room with fragmented reports from various locations, none of it making much sense to the two new arrivals. As they took everything in, they heard a loud whistle piercing through the air. After looking around for the source, they spotted General Morrison standing near the back of the room. He was hard to miss, 6 feet tall, built like a tank, and despite being in his mid-50s, he looked like he could best any man on the base in physical combat. "Captain, my office now!" Morrison bellowed. Thompson and Brooks made their way through the madness into the back office. As they entered, Morrison motioned for them to shut the door. "I was wondering when you boys would get here," Morrison said. "My apologies, General. I wasn't aware it was urgent," Thompson replied. Morrison looked down at the men's coffee cups, giving a knowing nod at the sight. "Well, you better enjoy that cup you waited on, because it's going to be your last good one for a while," Morrison said. Morrison motioned for them to have a seat, which the soldiers did, even if it was an unusual request. The general rarely had anyone sit during briefings. He preferred his men standing at attention. They noticed that the general looked spooked, which only served to unnerve them more. In all their years serving under Morrison, neither man had ever seen him rattled. The guy had been through 3 combat deployments and countless crisis situations without breaking a sweat. "Boys, there's no good way to say this, but the apocalypse is upon us," Morrison said. The two soldiers remained in stunned silence for several moments, unable to come up with anything to say. Thompson felt his coffee cup grow cold in his hands as he tried to process what he'd just heard. "Since time is most definitely not on our side, I'm going to nutshell it for you," Morrison continued. "Some terrorist dicknuts released a biological agent down in Texas. By the time anybody knew what happened, it had already infected the nation. Anybody with A-type blood is going to get very sick, then turn into something violent that needs to be put down." Morrison again paused, letting the two soldiers soak it in, which they struggled to do. Brooks set his coffee cup down with shaking hands, the reality of the situation beginning to hit home. "Yeah, I was silent for a while after I was told that too," Morrison said. "But the order to retreat got me fired up." "Retreat? What are you talking about, General?" Thompson asked. "The brains in D.C. decided that this shit show is going to be of biblical proportions, and the only chance for success is to jump ship and regroup in Kansas," Morrison explained. "My God, exactly how bad is this going to be?" Brooks asked. "Well, Sergeant, everybody with A-type blood is infected, and 40% of the population has that blood type," Morrison replied. "I'll let you do the math." "Jesus Christ," Brooks breathed. "What kind of threat are we dealing with?" "You said that they're violent?" Thompson asked. "My information is limited, but they're fast, don't react to reason or pain, and only a shot to the head will put them down," Morrison explained. "Oh, and they bite." "I'm not sure I had zombie apocalypse on my bingo card this morning," Brooks said. "Call it whatever you want to, just don't get bit," Morrison replied. "I can guarantee that wasn't on my card," Brooks muttered. "So how can we help with the evacuation, General?" Thompson asked. "That's the thing, Captain. You and your team aren't evacuating," Morrison said. Thompson and Brooks shared a confused look. "So what are we doing?" Thompson asked. "You're staying behind with a detachment of soldiers," Morrison explained. "Your mission is to secure the college football stadium on the south side of town." "So we're what? Going to be decoys?" Thompson asked. "No, I wouldn't sacrifice someone with your experience for a bullshit job like that," Morrison replied. "You have one of the most important jobs of anyone, protecting the VIPs." Thompson let out a bit of a horror laugh, shaking his head. "VIPs? What, are we protecting politicians and high rollers?" he asked. "Hell no, I mean actual VIPs," Morrison said. "Doctors, mechanics, engineers, people who can put civilization back together after it falls apart. I've already sent several teams out into the city to round them up. Jesus, they really think it is the apocalypse, don't they? Brooks asked. I don't say things for shock value, Sergeant, Morrison replied. How long do we have? Thompson asked. Based on the timeline I was given, some of those things should already be loose out in the city, Morrison said. With each hour, their numbers are going to grow. If you're not locked down by dawn, I'm not sure you're going to be. Then we better get moving then, Thompson said. Head over to Hangar 6. I have your troops getting prepped, Morrison instructed. Link up with Becky Scott when you get over there. She's a civilian contractor I worked with over in the sandbox, smart as a whip, and one of the best logistics experts in the business. She's going to be advising you, and I'm advising you to take her advice. Yes, sir, Thompson replied. Thompson and Brooks stood up, giving the general a salute before turning to leave the office. As they reached the door, the general called out. And one more thing, you need to be out by 0200, Morrison said, because that's when we're sealing this place up. We'll be out of your hair by then, General, Thompson said. Good luck, gentlemen. You're going to need it. Chapter 2. Thompson and Brooks drove a golf cart across the base, weaving in and out between soldiers and civilians working on a variety of things. The night air was filled with the sound of engines starting, equipment being loaded, and the distant hum of helicopters overhead. The captain stopped the cart in front of a hangar near the residential area, staring at the scene before them. What they saw made both men's blood run cold. Mother of God, Brooks said. Soldiers and civilians alike were lined up, being led into the hangar, which had a single entrance by the nearly closed doors. Armed guards stood around, their rifles in their hands ready for use. The line moved slowly, methodically, like cattle being herded to slaughter. As they looked, they noticed that many of the people in line were visibly sick, some having to be held up by others. Their faces were pale, sweat beading on their foreheads despite the cool night air. Some coughed violently, doubling over as they struggled to stay upright. Others seemed delirious, their eyes unfocused and glassy. Cap, why are they herding people into the hangar? Brooks asked. I think we both know the answer, even if we don't like it, Thompson replied. Brooks gave a subtle nod, knowing that the captain was right. They were infected with whatever the biological agent the terrorists had released, the A-type blood carriers who were already showing symptoms. Rather than contemplate the people's fate, they drove on, neither man wanting to think too hard about what was happening inside that hangar. A few minutes later, they reached Hangar 6, which had a couple hundred soldiers inside, all of whom were gearing up. The massive space buzzed with activity as men and women checked weapons, loaded magazines, and secured gear. Several dozen transport trucks sat outside, with soldiers checking them out, ensuring they were fueled and ready for the mission ahead. The scene was organized chaos at its finest. Weapons were being distributed from crates, ammunition was being counted and allocated, and medical supplies were being packed into field kits. Thompson had seen similar preparations before deployments overseas, but never on American soil. Never with the knowledge that they weren't heading into a foreign war zone, but into their own backyard. This is really happening, isn't it, Cap? Brooks asked. I'm afraid so, Sarge, Thompson replied. So we best get to it. The two men stepped out of the cart, spotting a woman walking in their direction. She was in her late 30s, brown hair pulled into a ponytail, which bounced against her rock band t-shirt. Despite the casual attire, she moved with purpose and confidence, clipboard in hand, clearly in her element, despite the circumstances. Are you Captain Thompson? She asked. That's me, Thompson replied. You must be Becky Scott. Just Becky. We don't have time for formality, she said. Fair enough, Thompson said. So, what's the situation? The general gave us 300 soldiers to work with, not including your squad, who are on the way here, by the way, Becky explained. I've taken the liberty of dispatching 10 soldiers to the stadium as an advance team. Their mission is to make sure we have multiple entry points when we arrive. That sounds good. What else? Thompson asked. Based on my research, the property manager for the facility is Diane Cooper, who lives on the east side of town, Becky continued. I sent a 6-man team over to pick her and her family up, figuring that having someone who knows the ins and outs of the facility would be useful. Sounds like you're on top of things, Thompson said. Oh, we're just getting started, Captain, Becky replied. Follow me. Becky led the trio through the hangar to a table that was set up along the side wall. The table was covered with maps, supply lists, and what looked like architectural plans. On it was a map of Las Vegas with several areas highlighted in different colors: red circles, blue squares, green triangles. Each marking seemed to have its own significance. Most of the areas were circled on the south side of town near the stadium. However, several were on the west side of town. As they approached, she grabbed a clipboard from the table, flipping through it to bring up a specific page. The clipboard was thick with papers, each page covered in neat handwriting and detailed notes. The general gave me the task of turning the stadium into a self-sustaining fortress that could house 2,000 people, Becky said. Mother of God, just how many VIPs are living here in Vegas? Brooks asked. More than you'd think, Becky replied. And don't interrupt. There will be time to talk about that later. Thompson gave the sergeant a playful smack on the arm to get him to quiet down, bringing small smiles to their faces despite the gravity of the situation. I've broken down the needs into groups, Becky continued. The first is immediate needs, getting us through the first 2 weeks. That consists primarily of food, clothing, and beds. How are beds an immediate need? Brooks asked. Becky glared at the sergeant for interrupting her, prompting him to put his hands up in an apologetic manner. Her expression softened slightly, but her tone remained serious and focused. Without getting bogged down too much, beds are definitely an immediate need, Becky explained. Sergeant, we're about to rip nearly 2,000 people out of their beds in the middle of the night. Take them to a football stadium, where they might have to spend the next few years of their life, all while dealing with the reality that their family and friends are going to be on the outside dealing with a hellscape apocalypse. It's going to be a struggle to keep order as it is, but you want to know what will throw gas on that lit powder keg? Tell them that their best option is sleeping upright in hard plastic chairs exposed to the elements. Brooks thought about it for a moment before giving a subtle nod. The logic was sound, even if it hadn't been immediately obvious. Yeah, that sounds like an immediate need, Brooks said. Continue. Thank you, Becky said. Now, fortunately, the general has provided me with 500 cots and roughly 20,000 MREs, so we at least have a foothold. Becky pointed to the map, 2 spots on the west side of town that were circled in red marker. I've broken the soldiers up into teams of 25, and I'm dedicating 4 teams with immediate needs, she continued. These 2 spots here are strip malls with supercenters and outdoor stores, so they'll be able to stock up on food, sleeping bags, tents, and clothing. I like it, Thompson said. What are the other 8 teams focused on? It's really 7.5 teams since I allocated some to the stadium advance team, Becky replied. 1 team is coming with us to the stadium, but 6 of them are going to be focused on our long-term survival. Most of them are going to be focused on hardware stores, getting what we need to grow our own food inside the stadium. This climate isn't exactly known to be friendly to farmers, Thompson pointed out. Some crops are better than others, but there are some farms here in the city, so it's possible, Becky said. They're stocking up on solar panels, grow lights, seeds, everything that they can grab. There are several farmers on the VIP list, so they'll be able to figure out what to do from there. I like it, Thompson said. So do I, but what is that half team going to be doing? Brooks asked. They're on entertainment, Becky replied. Becky pointed to a small dot on the southern side of town, near the stadium. It was marked with a green circle and had several notes written beside it in small print. This spot has a strip mall with an electronics store and a large used media store, she explained. I'm sending them down there to grab every television, gaming console, movie, book, and anything else that is remotely entertaining. People can usually handle being stuck somewhere for a week or 2, especially if they're focused on survival. However, it's likely we're going to be there months at a minimum, and if what the general has told us is accurate, it might be years. And let me tell you from experience, it doesn't take long before boredom becomes your most dangerous enemy. Preaching to the choir over here, Thompson said. 4 deployments to the sandbox where the most popular activity was hurry up and wait. I'm glad you understand, Captain, Becky replied. If you keep that mentality, we just might see our way through this. Becky looked over across the hangar where someone was waving at her for attention. A soldier near a stack of supply crates was gesturing frantically, clearly needing her input on something important. Excuse me, Captain. I have orders to hand out, Becky said. Becky walked away, leaving Thompson and Brooks standing there. After a few moments, they broke into laughter, the absurdity of the situation finally hitting them. Here they were, in the middle of what might be the end of the world, and they were discussing entertainment systems and sleeping arrangements. "Do you know what the most curious thing is, Sergeant?" Thompson asked. "What's that cap?" Brooks replied. "With the way she's running things, why did the general think I needed to be in charge?" Thompson said. Brooks let out a laugh, patting his friend on the back. It was true. Becky seemed to have every detail planned out, every contingency covered. She was running the operation like a seasoned military commander, despite being a civilian contractor. As they carried on, a familiar voice called out from near the entrance. "Hey, Captain, we're here," came the voice. Corporal Hayes was the team's medic. Despite being an attractive blonde woman, the group treated her like one of the guys. She had been in the thick of the action with them, patching up the team members on more than one occasion. Her medical bag was slung over her shoulder, and she carried herself with the confidence of someone who had seen combat and come out the other side. Behind her was the rest of the team. Private Walsh was a fresh-faced kid, tall and lanky, having served with them on a single deployment to the sandbox. He was eager to please and quick to follow orders, though he sometimes asked too many questions for his own good. Private Washington stood just a hair over 5'5", and he counted every half inch. Despite his small stature, he was always ready to throw down, and had proven himself capable of handling soldiers twice his size in hand-to-hand combat. His compact frame belied his strength and determination. Leading up the rear was Private Martinez. He was young like the other privates, but unlike them, was a dead-eye shot. No matter where he went, he had his rifle slung over his shoulder, and tonight was no exception. The weapon looked like an extension of his body, and Thompson had seen him make impossible shots under pressure. The captain waved his team over, stepping up to address them. The familiar faces brought him some comfort in the situation surrounding them. These were his people, soldiers he had trained with and fought alongside. If anyone could handle what was coming, it was this group. "Okay, team, we've been through a lot together, but this mission is going to be one for the books." Chapter 3. Captain Thompson sat in the passenger seat of an SUV as they sped down the darkened streets of Las Vegas. Behind him was a small convoy of transport trucks carrying soldiers meant to secure the stadium. The convoy stretched out for nearly a quarter mile, headlights cutting through the desert darkness like a military procession heading into uncertain territory. The convoy stuck to roads on the outer portions of town, not wanting to risk running into zombie resistance. While they knew the threat wasn't full-blown yet, they didn't want to take the chance. The city looked eerily quiet from their vantage point, with only the distant lights of downtown filling the darkness. Sitting behind the wheel was Private Washington, and in the back seat was Becky, who was flipping through a stack of papers on her clipboard. The interior of the SUV was illuminated by the soft glow of the dashboard, casting shadows across their faces as they navigated the empty streets. "So, Becky, the general spoke very highly of you," Thompson said. "Well, he should, given how I pulled his ass out of the fire over in the sandbox," Becky replied. Thompson cracked a smile at the woman's bravado. Her confidence was reassuring, especially given the magnitude of what they were trying to accomplish. "You saved his ass, huh? Is that a fact?" Thompson asked. "It very much is," Becky said. "Care to elaborate?" Thompson said. Becky let out a sigh, stopping her shuffling of papers to look up to the front seat. She was clearly agitated by the constant interruptions, but Thompson could see she was also somewhat proud of whatever story she was about to tell. "Not really, but if it will keep you quiet so I can do my job, so be it," Becky said. The general was facing a revolt amongst the population of a mid-sized city. In order to pacify the target, decisions were made. Decisions that decimated the local infrastructure. To be frank, the general was quite good at tearing stuff down. But rebuilding it? Not so much. Central Command sent me out there to put a Band-Aid on the situation. "And I'm guessing you did?" Thompson asked. "Oh, I did more than that," Becky replied. "I had water flowing and shelves stocked by the end of the week, which was no small feat given that we were in the middle of a war-torn country. The general was so impressed that he refused to let me return to Central Command." "Believe me when I say that is high praise," Thompson said. "I took it as such," Becky replied. "Cap, we're coming up on the stadium," Washington said. Becky leaned forward to get a look at the scene. In the distance, the large football stadium stood tall, its concrete and steel structure rising against the Nevada sky like a modern coliseum. On fall Saturdays, 50,000 people would pile inside to enjoy a game. Tonight, however, it was dark and empty, casting an ominous silhouette against the city lights beyond. The massive structure dominated the landscape, its parking lot stretching out like concrete seas in all directions. During game days, those lots would be filled with tailgating fans and vendors hawking team merchandise. Now they were barren expanses of asphalt, broken only by the occasional light pole casting pools of yellow illumination. "Something's not right," Becky said. "What do you mean?" Thompson asked. "The advanced team should have had the interior lights on by now," Becky explained. "Maybe they couldn't find them?" Thompson suggested. "I gave them step-by-step directions on where to find them," Becky said. "My teenage cousin could have flipped them on, and he's a dumbass." Thompson could hear the concern in Becky's voice, prompting him to grab his radio. The device crackled to life as he keyed the microphone, the static cutting through the tension in the vehicle. "Sergeant Brooks, we may have a problem," Thompson said. "What else is new, Cap?" Brooks replied. "When we stop, I want our squad to take point. Have another squad form a perimeter around the trucks," Thompson instructed. "Copy that. We'll be ready to move," Brooks said. "We're on site in 30 seconds, Thompson said. Thompson clicked off the radio, the device going silent in his hands. "Becky, where's the entry point?" Thompson asked. "East side of the stadium, loading dock," Becky replied. "Private, get us there," Thompson said. "You got it, Cap," Washington said. Washington hit the gas, picking up the pace. The SUV accelerated smoothly, and within seconds they had the loading dock in view, along with the two SUVs that the advance team drove. However, there was no visible movement around the vehicles, no signs of the soldiers who should have been securing the perimeter. The loading dock area was bathed in the harsh glare of security lights, but the brightness only made the absence of personnel more noticeable. The two advance team SUVs sat abandoned, their doors closed, no movement visible through the windows. "Washington, stop by that streetlight," Thompson said. The private nodded as he pulled over to a light that was 30 yards from the loading dock. As soon as they came to a stop, Thompson threw open the door, jumping out and readying his rifle. The weapon felt familiar in his hands, a comfort he'd grown accustomed to during his multiple deployments. "You two stay in the car," Thompson said. "Washington, if things go south, you get Becky out of here." "You got it, Cap," Washington replied. Thompson walked up to the front of the vehicle, the rest of his team joining him a few moments later. Sergeant Brooks stood by his shoulder, both of them with their rifles at the ready. Corporal Hayes, Private Walsh, and Private Martinez fanned out to either side, creating a tactical formation they had practiced countless times in training and used in combat overseas. The team moved with precision, each soldier knowing their role without needing instruction. "What's the play, Cap?" Brooks asked. "We need to get inside and get the lights on," Thompson replied. "I thought the advance team was supposed to do that," Brooks said. Thompson pulled his rifle up, giving it a light tap to draw attention to it. The gesture was subtle, but clear. "They were," Thompson said. The motion was enough to send the message to the others that the advance team might now be a threat. The entire squad brought their weapons to the firing position before following the captain as they moved towards the stadium. Their boots made soft sounds on the asphalt as they advanced, each step measured and deliberate. The 5 of them barely made it 10 yards before they caught movement in the shadows, forcing them to stop. A soldier in fatigue stumbled out from behind one of the vehicles, drawn by the sound of footsteps on the pavement. The figure moved awkwardly, with an unnatural gait that immediately set off alarm bells in Thompson's mind. It lumbered out into the light from the headlights of the SUV, revealing a bloody and tattered uniform. The soldier's face was pale and slack, his eyes reflecting the light with an empty, hungry stare. As soon as it noticed the soldiers, it let out an excited moan before sprinting towards them. Thompson froze for a moment, giving his mind a few moments to grasp what he was seeing. The creature that had once been a fellow soldier moved with predatory intensity, arms outstretched, mouth open in a silent scream. As the creature ran 10 yards, he snapped out of it, sending a well-placed shot through its forehead. The gunshot echoed throughout the empty parking lot, bouncing off the building and reverberating through the night air. As it dissipated, it was replaced by multiple moans coming from the darkness, a chorus of inhuman sounds that made the hair on the back of Thompson's neck stand up. In a flash, multiple figures emerged from the darkness around the loading dock area and from behind the parked vehicles. Most of them were in bloody fatigues, chunks taken out of their flesh, pieces of uniform hanging in tatters. A few of them were dressed in civilian clothes, all of them sharing the same murderous intent on their faces. "Light them up!" Thompson yelled. The entire squad began firing towards the encroaching horde. The sound of automatic weapons fire filled the air as muzzle flashes illuminated the parking lot in stroboscopic bursts. Several of their initial shots found their targets, blowing out the back of the creatures' skulls, dropping them to the asphalt with wet thuds. Several shots, however, either missed or hit the creatures in the torso, doing nothing to slow them down. The things kept coming, despite taking rounds that would have dropped a normal person instantly. The firing intensified as the ghouls got closer, the enemy ranks thinning with each step. Empty brass casings clinked onto the pavement as the soldiers maintained their disciplined fire, picking their targets and making every shot count. Before long, there was only a single creature still standing, getting within 5 yards of the captain. Thompson took his time, steadying his aim before squeezing the trigger. The bullet snapped the head of the creature back, knocking it to the ground with force. The parking lot fell silent except for the ringing in their ears from the gunfire. The parking lot was now quiet, but the soldiers remained on high alert. They continued scanning the area, weapons ready, eyes searching the shadows for any sign of movement. Only when Thompson was satisfied that the immediate threat was neutralized did he allow himself to relax slightly. "Come on, let's get inside," Thompson said. The captain waved for the convoy to follow as his squad moved up on foot. They kept their aims trained on the building, ready for any movement, but finding none. The soldiers from the transport trucks began disembarking, forming up in tactical formations as they prepared to secure the stadium. Thompson jumped up onto the loading dock, going over to the breach point to find that the door was ajar. He looked down, spotting a pool of blood on the concrete, the dark stain reflecting the overhead lights. He kept his foot against the base of the door, making sure it couldn't open further while he assessed the situation. The captain looked back to the soldiers that were getting out of the backs of the trucks. He let out a whistle to get their attention, the sharp sound cutting through the night air and drawing the focus of every soldier in the area. "2 squads on me, right now," Thompson called out. Within moments, he had 2 squads of 6 standing on the loading dock with him. The soldiers moved with military precision, weapons ready, eyes alert. He spoke forcefully, but keeping calm, his voice carrying the authority of years of combat experience. "There might be hostiles inside," Thompson said. "Get in there and clear the outer loop. 1 squad, 1 direction, and make some noise because that seems to rile them up." The soldiers gave the captain a nod before breaching the building, ready to attack. They moved through the doorway in tactical formation, their weapons raised and ready for contact. As they went, Becky walked up, her clipboard still in hand, despite everything that had just unfolded. "Captain, we need to get these lights on," Becky said. "Pick you a soldier and tell them where to go," Thompson replied. Becky nodded before retreating back to the trucks. Thompson stood there for a moment, looking out over the parking lot, relieved to see that their gunfire hadn't attracted more attention from the surrounding area. The city beyond still seemed quiet, though he knew that could change at any moment. Before he could get too comfortable, however, a soldier ran up from one of the trucks, carrying a radio. The device was crackling with static and intermittent transmissions, the soldier's face grim as he approached. "Captain Thompson, we have a problem," the soldier said. "What is it, soldier?" Thompson asked. "One of the acquisition teams is requesting backup," the soldier explained. "What's the issue?" Thompson asked. "They said they were experiencing heavy resistance, then the line went dead," the soldier replied. "Before it did, though, I heard a lot of gunfire." "Where?" Thompson asked. "A supercenter on the west side of town," the soldier said. Thompson thought about it for a moment. His first instinct was to go after them himself, but as soon as he spotted an SUV pulling up with a civilian woman in the front seat, he knew he couldn't leave. The mission required his presence here, even though every instinct told him to help his fellow soldiers. "I'm guessing that's the property manager," Thompson said. "Damn it!" Thompson hemmed and hawed for another moment before turning to Brooks. "Sergeant, go get our troops and come back with those supplies," Thompson said. "We're on it, Cap," Brooks replied. Brooks motioned for the squad to follow him as the radio soldier came along to provide them with information. As they walked away, another soldier walked up with the civilian, a middle-aged woman who looked confused and irritated by the circumstances. "Captain, this is Diane Cooper, the property manager," the soldier said. The middle-aged blonde woman looked less than thrilled to be standing there. Her hair was disheveled, and she wore a hastily thrown-on jacket over what appeared to be pajamas. Her expression was a mixture of confusion, anger, and growing fear. "Captain, do you mind telling me just what in the hell is going on?" Diane asked. "Your lackey here drugged me out of bed and refused to tell me anything other than I had to come with him," Diane continued. Before the captain could talk, the lights on the stadium lit up, catching them off guard. The massive structure suddenly blazed with illumination, revealing the full scope of the facility they were about to convert into a fortress. The sudden brightness was almost blinding after the darkness they had been operating in. "You better come inside, Diane. We have a lot to discuss." Chapter 4. Sergeant Brooks was behind the wheel of the SUV as Corporal Hayes rode shotgun, staring at the GPS app on her phone to navigate them to the supercenter. The three privates sat in the back seat, looking out the window at the darkened city. The vehicle moved through the empty streets like a ghost, headlights cutting through the Nevada darkness as they navigated toward their destination. It was mostly quiet, however. They could see the occasional figure running in the shadows. Even though they couldn't get a good look at them, their movements put them on edge. The figures moved with an unnatural gait, sometimes stumbling, sometimes sprinting with inhuman speed. None of it looked normal, and the soldiers found themselves gripping their weapons tighter with each passing block. The city that never slept had become a place of eerie silence, broken only by distant sirens and the occasional scream echoing through the urban canyon. Streetlights illuminated empty intersections, where normally there would be traffic even at this hour. Storefronts that should have been bustling with late-night activity sat dark and abandoned. "This whole thing is crazy, right? Like, this is next-level crazy," Martinez said. "It's just another mission, man," Walsh replied. "Just another mission? Man, we're out here on the streets of Las Vegas," Martinez continued. "Any other day that would be national news. Somehow, I don't think that's going to be the top story come the morning," Washington said. Washington pointed out the window towards two creatures that appeared to be kneeling down beside a victim. Rather than slow down, the sergeant kept the pedal to the metal. The scene flashed by in seconds, but it was long enough for everyone in the vehicle to see the carnage taking place on the sidewalk. "There ain't nothing normal about what's going on," Brooks said, "and you better start getting your heads around that. Now quiet down and get focused, because we're almost there." The three privates did as instructed, staring straight ahead as they sped down the darkened street. The familiar weight of their weapons provided some comfort, but each man was dealing with the reality that they were no longer fighting foreign enemies on distant soil. This was their own country, their own people who had been turned into something monstrous. "The store should be about 3 more blocks up on the left," Hayes said. Brooks nodded as he gripped the wheel tightly. He let off the gas as they got within the last block, not wanting to run the risk of running headlong into trouble. The supercenter's massive sign was visible in the distance, though most of the letters had gone dark, creating an ominous silhouette against the night sky. As the store came into view, he slammed his foot down on the brakes, causing the tires to squeal as they dragged across the asphalt. He grimaced at the sound, given what was at the front of the store. The noise echoed through the empty parking lot, a sound that might have attracted unwanted attention. "Jesus Christ," Hayes breathed. Nearly 50 creatures were pressed against the entrance of the store, clamoring to get inside. They stretched out across the entire front of the building, some vanishing behind the trio of transport trucks sitting idle in the parking lot. The massive bodies moved like a single organism, pushing and clawing at the glass doors with mindless determination. The creatures were a horrifying mix of civilians and what appeared to be members of the military supply teams. Some wore the familiar fatigues of their fellow soldiers, while others were dressed in everything from pajamas to business suits. All of them shared the same vacant, hungry expression and the telltale signs of violence that had transformed them. The 5 soldiers sat in the middle of the street, looking on in horror at the sight. The scale of what they were seeing began to sink in. The reality that this outbreak was far worse than any of them had imagined. "What in God's name are we supposed to do with that?" Washington asked. "Does that look normal to you, Walsh?" Martinez said. The previously dismissive private sat with a lump in his throat, staring at the horde of ghouls. Before fear could fully set in, the sergeant began barking orders. "Radio now," Brooks commanded. The corporal grabbed the radio from her bag on the floorboard, handing it over. Brooks clicked it on, the device crackling to life in the confined space of the SUV. Team 6, do you copy?" Brooks said into the radio. Nothing but static came back over the line, the white noise filling the vehicle with an ominous silence. "Team 6, this is Sergeant Brooks," he tried again. "My squad is outside of your position, ready to assist. Do you copy?" Nothing but static came back, the radio offering no hope that their fellow soldiers were still alive inside the store. "Maybe their radio person dropped it while securing the building," Hayes suggested. "Or maybe the radio person is in the crowd there," Washington said. "You shut your mouth, Private," Brooks snapped. "We're not having any of that talk." Washington piped down, sitting back in his seat. The tension in the vehicle was palpable as they all stared at the writhing mass of creatures outside the store. "Sarge, how are we going to deal with this?" Hayes asked. "Maybe we can sneak around to the back and get in through the loading dock," Martinez suggested. "Not if it's locked," Washington replied. "And we don't know if there's anybody alive inside." "You saw how those things back at the stadium rushed us as soon as they heard us shooting," Martinez pointed out. "What's to stop them from following us around back?" Washington wanted to give a rebuttal, but couldn't think of anything that didn't sound like complete nonsense. The creatures had shown an almost supernatural ability to detect sound and movement, making stealth nearly impossible. "Sarge," Hayes prompted. "I'm thinking Hayes," Brooks replied. As they sat in the middle of the road, everyone jumped when a creature smacked into the back of their vehicle. They turned around to spot a bloody creature slamming its hands against the back windshield. The impact was loud and jarring, the sound of flesh hitting glass echoing through the SUV. They studied it for a moment, seeing the rage in its eyes, but also its lack of intelligence. The creature wasn't trying to open the door or climb on top looking for another way in. It was just trying to break through the glass with brute force. Its movements were mechanical, repetitive, driven by instinct rather than thought. The thing had once been a middle-aged man, probably someone's father or husband. Now it was nothing more than a predator, its face smeared with blood, chunks of flesh hanging from its teeth. Its clothes were torn and stained, and one arm hung at an unnatural angle, but it showed no signs of pain or awareness of its injuries. Sergeant Brooks got a smile on his face as an idea formed. He scanned the parking lot, spotting another SUV sitting near the back of the lot, likely an employee's vehicle. The wheels began turning in his head as he formulated a plan. "Get your guns ready, because I know what we're going to do," Brooks said. Before anybody could ask for details about the plan, the SUV lurched forward, picking up speed quickly before coming to a stop directly beside its sister vehicle in the lot. The noise drew the attention of a few creatures near the back of the horde, the ghouls peeling off from the mass and rushing their way. Brooks watched them approach with clinical interest, studying their behavior and movement patterns. The sergeant didn't move or react, just watching intently as the creatures ran towards them. Just like he mentally predicted, the ghouls smacked into the front end of the SUV, not attempting to climb up it. They clawed at the metal and glass, but showed no understanding of how to actually reach their prey. "All right, we're in business," Brooks said. "What are you talking about, Sarge?" Martinez asked. Brooks reached up, opening the sunroof before climbing through. The other 4 soldiers watched, confused at their sergeant's actions. The creatures below continued to claw at the vehicle, but made no attempt to follow him up. After several moments, they realized that the creatures weren't trying to get to him. "I'm pretty sure we're safe up here," Brooks called down. "Now get your asses topside. We have some crazies who are in need of being put down." One by one, the rest of his squad climbed up to the tops of the SUVs. They spread out amongst the 2 vehicles, staring down at the mob that was slowly pulling away from the building in order to go after the more easily accessible prey. The vantage point gave them a clear view of the entire parking lot and the creatures below. They stared at the creatures, seeing that most of them had major injuries due to bites. Chunks of flesh were missing from arms, necks, and faces. A few of them, however, were unscathed, the only blood on them coming from their mouths and likely from their victims. "This is nightmarish," Hayes said. Private Martinez focused his attention on a teenage girl, not more than 14, that was at the front of the crowd. She was missing a chunk of flesh from her shoulder and had the same murderous look on her face. Her school clothes were torn and bloodied, and she moved with the same mindless aggression as the adults around her. "Are you sure there's nothing we can do for them, Sarge?" Martinez asked. "I mean, look at her. She can't be older than my baby sister." Brooks let out a sigh, shaking his head at the question. He understood the reluctance, the human instinct to try to save what appeared to be a child, but he also understood the reality of their situation. "I know you're hesitant, Martinez, but take a good long look at her and tell me if you think she can be helped," Brooks said. "Hell, look at any of them and tell me you think they can be helped. Even if we could undo whatever turned them crazy, do you think any of them would survive missing their throat?" Brooks pointed to a couple of creatures that matched his description. One was missing most of its neck, the wound gaping and raw, yet it continued to move with the same relentless hunger. Reluctantly, Martinez gave his sergeant a nod. "Yeah, you're right, Sarge," Martinez said. "It just doesn't feel right, though." "I know, but we're soldiers, and we gotta do what needs to be done," Brooks replied. "So pick your targets and start putting them down." The rest of the squad followed their sergeant's lead as he pulled his rifle up to his shoulder. He picked his target, squeezing the trigger and sending a round through its head. The creature dropped instantly, the body crumpling to the asphalt like a marionette with cut strings. The gunfire was quickly followed by the rest of his team doing the same thing. Within moments, creatures were dropping to the ground, only to be replaced by creatures that were breaking away from the store. The sound of gunfire echoed across the parking lot, muzzle flashes illuminating the night like deadly fireworks. The assault went on for several minutes, the soldiers methodically blowing out the brains of every creature that got within reach. Empty brass casings rained down onto the roof of the SUVs as they maintained their disciplined fire. Eventually, the guns fell silent, leaving the parking lot with an eerie calm. The soldiers stayed on top of the SUVs for a solid minute, scanning the road and surrounding buildings for more creatures. Even though they created quite the ruckus, no other creatures came towards them. The immediate threat had been neutralized, but they all knew this was just the beginning. "Come on, let's get inside and see what we're dealing with." Chapter 5. Sergeant Brooks stood on top of the SUV hood, surveying the carnage laying on the ground before him. Nearly 50 bodies stretched out for several yards, piled on top of one another, each creature put down with ruthless efficiency. The parking lot looked like a battlefield, corpses scattered across the asphalt in grotesque heaps. The smell was already beginning to rise from the bodies, a mixture of blood and something else he couldn't quite identify. Death had a particular odor, one he'd become familiar with during his deployments, but this was different somehow. More primal, more wrong. Brooks gave his landing zone a good long look before leaping, making sure that nothing was moving on the ground. He studied each body carefully, watching for any sign of movement, any twitch that might indicate one of the creatures was still active. After he was convinced it was safe, he jumped off. He stumbled a bit on the unevenness of the bodies, but managed to reach solid ground after a few steps. The sergeant looked back to the others, who were still standing on top of the vehicles, their faces grim as they surveyed the scene below. "Well, are you coming? Or do I need to send a formal invite?" Brooks called. The rest of his squad made their way down to the parking lot, taking a few extra moments to navigate the bodies. Each soldier moved carefully, stepping around the corpses while keeping their weapons ready. Once they were together, Brooks motioned for them to move quickly as they headed to the front of the store. The supercenter loomed before them, its massive glass frontage reflecting the parking lot lights. During normal times, the store would have been bustling with late-night shoppers and employees restocking shelves. Now, it stood like a fortress, its automatic doors sealed against the outside world. "Cover me while I figure out how to get in here," Brooks said. His squad fanned out a bit, covering every direction as the sergeant began working on the front door. It was an automatic sliding door that had been switched off and locked from the inside. Undeterred, Brooks pulled out a large combat knife and dug it into the small opening between the two doors. The blade scraped against metal as he worked to find purchase in the mechanism. It took a few moments of work, but he managed to break the lock, freeing them to open. "We're in," Brooks announced. "When we get inside, fan out and sweep the store. I want to make sure we're not dealing with any crazies." The group nodded and got into position as the sergeant pulled open the doors. He slipped inside, stepping to the side so that his team could begin their sweep. As they moved into the store, he slid back over, pulling the front doors closed again to prevent any unwanted followers. The interior of the supercenter was brightly lit, the fluorescent lights humming overhead and casting everything in harsh white illumination. The store stretched out before them like a small city, aisles upon aisles of merchandise extending into the distance. It was eerily quiet, the normal sounds of commerce replaced by an unsettling silence. Sergeant Walsh went to the right, headed towards the produce section of the grocery portion of the store. He kept his rifle at the ready as he moved, the bright lights of the store illuminating everything. His boots made soft, squeaking sounds on the polished linoleum floor as he advanced through the entrance area. As he came up to the last aisle before the produce section, he slowed down, hearing something coming from further back in the store. The sound was wet and rhythmic, like someone eating soup, but louder and more disturbing. He turned around trying to get the attention of anybody else, but they had already vanished down aisles. Walsh let out a frustrated sigh before steeling himself. He popped around the corner, aiming towards the source of the noise, but froze when he saw 4 creatures feasting on a poor victim on the ground. The scene was horrific. Blood pooled around the body as the creatures tore chunks of flesh away with their teeth. All 4 of the creatures wore bloody fatigues, one of them still having their rifle slung over their shoulder. The sight of fellow soldiers turned into these things sent a chill down Walsh's spine. In an instant, all 4 creatures let out moans and broke into a sprint for him. "Contact! Contact!" Walsh yelled. Walsh opened fire while running for cover in the produce section. His shots weren't on target, the adrenaline and panic affecting his aim as the bullets struck the creatures in the torso, but none hitting the head. The sound of gunfire echoed through the store, mixing with the inhuman moans of the approaching creatures. 2 of the creatures ran straight for him, slamming into a large cooling section filled with berries. Fruit flew everywhere, hitting the floor as the ghouls tried to push through the barrier. This gave Walsh a chance to take careful aim and squeeze the trigger. 2 quick shots dropped the attacking ghouls, their bodies crashing into the produce display and sending more fruit cascading to the floor. As he took them down, however, the other 2 creatures came around the side, getting within arm's reach. Walsh let out a panicked scream as he turned and fired, his aim low as the lead creature crashed into the front of his rifle. The impact was forceful enough to knock it out of his hands, sending him stumbling backwards to the ground. The weapon clattered across the floor, sliding out of reach as he fell. Walsh landed on his rear, kicking his feet against the floor to slide backwards as he reached for his sidearm. The 2 creatures continued pursuing him, refusing to slow down, their eyes locked on him with predatory hunger. His hand fumbled for the grip of his pistol as the creatures closed the distance. The private opened fire, pulling the trigger as fast as he could towards the encroaching ghouls. His first shot hit the creature's center mass, and he kept raising his aim while continually pulling the trigger. The muzzle flash lit up the produce section as he fought for his life. The 5th shot found pay dirt, hitting the creature in the head and dropping it. The ghoul had just enough momentum, however, to land on top of his legs, pinning the soldier to the ground. Before he could free himself, the 2nd creature was on top of him. The ghoul essentially dove on top, flailing its arms, smacking the soldier's weapon away. Walsh could smell the decay on its breath, see the bloodlust in its dead eyes as it reached for him with grasping hands. Walsh tried his best to keep the creature at bay, but the ghoul managed to grab onto his arm. In a flash, it sunk its teeth into his forearm, ripping out a chunk. The pain was immediate and excruciating, like having a piece of red-hot metal pressed against his skin. The private let out a pained scream as he yanked his arm free from its grasp. Before it could dive back in for a second bite, a bullet ripped through the back of its head, blowing out the front of its face. Brain matter and blood splattered across the produce section. The creature collapsed forward, landing on top of the private, who flailed about trying to get out from underneath the corpses of the creatures. A moment later, Brooks rushed over, which startled the young soldier. "You're all right, Walsh. You're all right," Brooks said. The private calmed down a bit as soon as he recognized Brooks, and understood that he wasn't trying to take a bite out of him. The sergeant worked quickly, pulling the bodies off of the young man, his hands coming away slick with blood. "The son of a bitch bit me!" Walsh cried. Walsh got back to his feet, delivering a few frustrated kicks to the head of the downed creature. As he tired himself out, the other soldiers came over to join them, each of them letting out gasps as they saw the condition of the young man. "Jesus, man, are you okay?" Washington asked. "Do I look okay to you?" Walsh snapped. Walsh held up his wounded arm for effect, getting Washington to back down. The bite was deep and ragged, blood flowing freely down his forearm and dripping onto the floor. "Sarge, I'm going to take Walsh over to the pharmacy section and get him patched up," Hayes said. "Good," Brooks replied. "When you're done, meet back at the front." "Actually, Sarge, we need to head to the back," Martinez said. "There's something you need to see." Brooks followed Martinez and Washington to the back of the store, heading down the rear aisle towards the storeroom. The back of the store was darker than the front, with fewer overhead lights and longer shadows between the tall shelving units. As they approached, 4 people stepped out from hiding, all civilians. 3 of them were men, 1 young, and the others middle-aged. A young woman in a supercenter uniform was in their ranks too. They looked terrified but relieved to see soldiers, their faces pale and drawn from whatever they had witnessed. "Does someone want to tell me what in the hell happened here?" Brooks asked. The group looked around to one another. Eventually, the young man was nominated to speak. He stepped forward, fear and bewilderment in his voice, his hands shaking as he tried to compose himself. "Hello, sir. I'm Jared," he said. "Jared, I'm Sergeant Brooks," Brooks replied. "Now tell me, what the hell happened here?" "Well, some of your men came here about an hour ago," Jared began. "They just marched in and started grabbing everything they could off the shelves. Despite looting the place, they were actually quite nice about it, even if they wouldn't tell us what was happening." Jared choked up for a moment, gathering himself before continuing. The memory of what he'd witnessed was clearly traumatic, his voice cracking with emotion. "We were here stocking when they showed up, so we just huddled together in the back office trying to call the store owner," he continued. "When we were in the back, we saw it happen on the security monitors." Jared trailed off again, his eyes distant as he relived the horror. "What happened?" Brooks prompted. "People just started attacking them," Jared said. "At first it was a couple, but before we knew it, there were a dozen of them. Everybody started shooting, trying to force them back out the door, but so many of the soldiers went outside and never came back," Jared continued. "A few of them managed to get the front door shut, but they were all bleeding pretty badly at that point." Jared paused again before continuing, the horror of it all washing over him as he remembered watching his fellow human beings torn apart. "We were going to go out and help until we saw one of them fall to the ground," he said. His buddy went over to help him up, but the one who fell, he attacked his friend. Before we knew it, all of them were either gone or they were biting into the ones who were left. Jared trailed off, his words failing him. "So there's no soldiers left?" Brooks asked. "No, sir, there's not," Jared replied. Brooks began pacing, muttering curses under his breath. The mission was falling apart, soldiers were dying, and now he was down to a handful of men trying to complete an impossible task. "Do you know how much they got onto the trucks?" Brooks asked. "No clue, but they were loading stuff up for a good half hour before things went bad," Jared said. "It's going to have to do," Brooks said. Brooks kept pacing as he pulled out his radio, clicking it on. The device crackled with static before connecting to the command frequency. "Captain Thompson, do you copy?" Brooks said. "We got a situation here." A few moments later, the line crackled to life, where gunshots filled the air in the background, indicating that the captain was dealing with his own problems. "Sergeant, whatever it is, you have my permission to do whatever you need to do to remedy the situation," Thompson replied. The line went dead before the sergeant could respond. He nodded to himself, trying to come to grips with being in charge of this operation now. After a moment, he looked over to Jared, a new plan forming in his mind. "Some of you know how to drive trucks, right?" Chapter 6. A little while earlier, Captain Thompson stood in the gateway leading to the field, standing at the railing and looking at the grass beyond. The lights were bright, bathing the turf in light. Despite the vastness, it felt empty. Not a single soul in sight. The field stretched out before him like a green ocean, pristine and untouched under the stadium lights. He let his mind wander for a moment, picturing Saturdays when the stadium was packed, 50,000 fans screaming for the local college team, the roar of the crowd, the smell of concession stand food, the excitement of game day. A smile crept onto his face for a moment, until he realized that those days were likely gone. "Is everything okay, Captain?" Becky asked. Thompson turned and spotted Becky walking up to him, with Diane beside her. The captain snapped out of his contemplative mood, getting back to business. He straightened his shoulders and focused on the task at hand. "Yeah, I'm fine, Becky," Thompson replied. "Just thinking of better days." "There will be plenty of time for that later," Becky said. "Of course," Thompson said. "What's the situation?" Becky motioned for Diane to take over. The property manager stepped forward, her clipboard in hand, looking more composed than she had when they first arrived. "Well, Captain, I've worked with your team to make sure every gate is locked down and secure," Diane explained. "We have the security office up and running, with 2 people monitoring the cameras. These not only cover every public entrance into the stadium, but every employee entrance," Diane continued. "How do the employees get into the building?" Thompson asked. "It's a keycard system," Diane replied. "They have to swipe and put in their employee number." "Have you disabled it?" Thompson asked. "No, we haven't," Diane said. "You need to," Thompson said firmly. "We can't risk anybody from the outside opening those doors and letting those people inside." "So you want to leave my employees out in the cold?" Diane said. "Do I want to?" "No, I wish we had room for everyone," Thompson replied. "But we don't, and I have my orders." "And some orders those must be," Diane said. Diane was dismissive, initially causing Thompson some anger, but he quickly settled down before going off on her. He understood the position he had put her in and sympathized with it. These weren't enemy combatants they were talking about, but innocent people who worked at this facility. "Diane, none of this is ideal," Thompson said, "but the threat is real. They're evacuating Nellis as we speak, just like they're doing to every military facility across the country. So, when the sun comes up, we're going to be alone out here." Diane's breath was taken away, as this was the first she had heard about the military evacuating. Her face went pale as the implications of what he was saying sank in. "Based on your reaction, I'm assuming nobody told you that," Thompson said. "It was an unimportant detail," Becky interjected. "We had work to do that took precedence." Diane turned and glared at Becky, as if she couldn't believe what she was hearing. Her expression was a mixture of shock, anger, and growing fear. "Clearly Diane doesn't agree," Thompson said. "How long do you think we're going to be here?" Diane asked. "Weeks at a minimum," Thompson replied. "But if I were a betting man, well, I wouldn't make New Year's plans." Diane's heart dropped as it was hitting her that this was a serious situation. The reality that they might be trapped here for months, possibly longer, was beginning to register. Before Thompson could say anything to comfort her, his radio sparked to life. "Captain, the first trucks are arriving," came the voice. "Excellent news, soldier," Thompson replied. "We're on the way." "Captain, you better hurry," the soldier continued, "because they're not alone." "Copy that," Thompson said. "Nobody gets inside the perimeter except our people." "Yes, sir," the soldier replied. Thompson clipped the radio to his vest, turning to Becky and Diane. The urgency in the soldier's voice told him that whatever was happening outside required his immediate attention. "If you'll excuse me, I need to go handle this," Thompson said. "Do what you need to do, Captain," Becky replied. "In the meantime, we'll disable the employee card readers." Thompson nodded and took off at a brisk pace, walking down the ramp to the outer loop of the stadium. His boots echoed off the concrete as he moved through the corridors that would normally be filled with vendors and fans on game day. He made the turn to head towards the loading docks, getting within 50 yards of it when he heard gunfire coming from outside. "Damn it!" Thompson cursed. The captain broke into a sprint, rushing towards the docks as the gunfire continued to intensify. It wasn't just a few guns, rather it sounded like dozens popping off, some close and some from distance. The echo of automatic weapons fire bounced off the stadium walls, creating a symphony of violence. As he approached the loading docks, he took a position by an open bay door. 4 soldiers were on the other side, taking turns popping out from behind, cover to shoot. Brass casings littered the concrete floor around their position. "Soldier, what the hell is going on?" Thompson asked. "About a dozen people followed one of the caravans back to the stadium," the soldier explained. "Somebody went out to tell them to turn around, and the next thing we know, shots were fired. It's kinda gone tits up since then." Thompson poked his head out around the edge of the door, trying to get a read on the situation. Across the parking lot, about 50 yards from his position, there were 4 civilian vehicles sitting side by side. The cars were arranged in a defensive formation, their occupants using them as cover. Multiple muzzle flashes were coming from the civilian position, as his soldiers had taken cover behind the trucks and vehicles closer to the building. The sound of bullets hitting metal and concrete filled the air as both sides exchanged fire. One bullet hit the edge of the door frame as he looked out, forcing him back behind cover. Concrete chips flew past his face as he ducked back into safety. As he recovered, his radio crackled to life. "Captain Thompson, do you copy? We got a situation here," Brooks's voice came through. The captain shook his head as he grabbed the radio, speaking quickly and forcefully. "Sergeant, whatever it is, you have my permission to do whatever you need to do to remedy the situation," Thompson replied. He clicked off the radio, hooking it back to his vest before barking out orders to the soldiers across the opening. "When I give the signal, I want you to lay down covering fire," Thompson instructed. "Focus your attention on the front end of the outer 2 cars. Hold them down as long as you can." "We'll go on your signal, Captain," one of the soldiers replied. Thompson gave them a nod before getting into a crouched position, his rifle at the ready. He took a deep breath, steadying himself before moving. "Now!" Thompson yelled. 3 of the soldiers emerged from behind cover, each of them pulling the trigger as quickly as they could, aiming at their specific targets. The concentrated fire forced the civilians to duck down behind their vehicles, giving Thompson the opening he needed. As they fired, the captain broke from cover, sliding as he reached the end of the loading dock, deftly dropping to the ground with ease. His military training kicked in as he moved across the open ground. As his boots hit the ground, he kept his momentum, speeding forward towards a car that was 15 yards away from the civilians shooting at them. He kept running as the gunfire coming from behind him continued, providing the suppression he needed to reach cover. As he got within 5 yards of the car, the gunshots behind him stopped. He was close enough to the civilians to see a couple of them popping up from cover with their weapons, their faces grim with determination and fear. Thompson hit the ground, sliding on the asphalt up to the side of the car as the gunfire started back up. A few bullets hit the other side of his vehicle, breaking a window and showering him with glass fragments. The captain got up to one knee, staying behind the wheel well for cover before turning and motioning for his men to stop shooting. After several moments, the civilians paused their assault, creating an uneasy silence across the parking lot. "You behind the cars, you need to stop shooting right now," Thompson called out. "The hell we will," came the angry response. The man squeezed off a few more shots before yelling again, his voice filled with desperation and rage. "You're going to let us inside," the man demanded. "I can't do that," Thompson replied. "In that case, you got a big problem on your hands," the man shot back. The man and his friends fired off a couple more shots. As they fired, Thompson's radio sparked up with another urgent transmission. "Captain, we're going to be coming in hot," the voice reported. "We got 3 truckloads of stuff, but there's 20 or 30 of those people running a few blocks behind us. We tried to shake them, but can't." "Drive straight for the docks and hurry up," Thompson replied, "and watch out for the civilians." "Copy that, Cap," the soldier replied. Thompson replaced his radio on his vest before yelling again, trying one more time to reason with the armed civilians. "All right, man, you need to listen to me right now," Thompson called. "Unless the next words out of your mouth has come in, I'm not interested," the man replied. "I'm guessing you're here because you know what's going on?" Thompson asked. "I know people are going batshit crazy and eating people," the man replied. "And I know you military assholes are taking all the good stuff for yourselves." "That's not quite right, but close enough," Thompson said. "Now, are you going to let us in?" the man demanded. "No, I'm not," Thompson replied, "but I'm going to give you a chance to live." "Most of you boys can't hit the broadside of a barn," the man taunted. "I'll take my chances." Before the captain could answer, a horn blared at the far end of the parking lot. Thompson peeked over the edge of the car, seeing the truck convoy racing toward them, and the couple dozen creatures just behind them, keeping pace with the vehicles. "Are you going to take your chances against them too?" Thompson asked. The captain gave the civilians a few seconds to look, seeing the trucks and trailing creatures coming right for them. He could hear the panic in their voices as they realized what was bearing down on their position. "You got 10 seconds before they're on you," Thompson warned. "You son of a bitch," the man yelled. Thompson watched as the civilians scrambled back into their cars just before the creatures reached them. A few ghouls smacked against the vehicles as the civilians sped off into the darkness, their headlights disappearing into the night. The captain adjusted his view to the creatures, seeing that they were bearing down on his position. He reacted quickly, getting up and diving through the broken window into the back seat of the car just before they arrived. Glass crunched under his body as he took cover. Within moments, the soldiers behind him opened fire, sending a torrent of bullets flying in his direction. A few hit the car, but they were aware of his hiding spot and were careful not to hit him. The sound of automatic weapons fire filled the air as his men engaged the advancing threat. After a solid minute of firing, the gunshots tapered off. The captain poked his head up, seeing a couple of soldiers walking towards him, stepping over the bodies of the fallen creatures. "We're clear, sir," one of them reported. Thompson opened the door, stepping out and shaking some of the broken glass out of his clothing. His uniform was torn in a few places, but he was uninjured. "Is everybody all right?" Thompson asked. "One guy took a grazing shot, another got a through and through in his arm," the soldier reported. "But other than that, we're good." Thompson nodded before turning to look out towards the entrance to the parking lot. At the moment, there weren't any other cars coming in, but he knew that could change at any moment. The night was still young, and more people would undoubtedly try to seek shelter here. "I want you to get every vehicle we can spare and form a defensive position around this dock," Thompson ordered. "Keep room for the trucks, but if we have more uninvited company, let's make sure we can hold them off." "Yes, sir," the soldier replied. The two soldiers ran off, leaving the captain to himself as he caught his breath. He stared out into the darkness, knowing there were a lot more trucks still scheduled to come in. The night was far from over, and he had a feeling things were only going to get worse. "All right, Brooks, you better be okay." Chapter 7. The sky was beginning to show the first signs of light as Sergeant Brooks led his crew in, loading up the trucks with everything they could get from the supercenter. The 4 civilian survivors helped out, using loading jacks to pull heavy boxes from the storeroom to the trucks. The eastern horizon glowed with the pale orange light of dawn, painting the parking lot in soft hues that contrasted sharply with the carnage scattered around them. The loading operation had been going on for the better part of an hour, with everyone working with desperate efficiency. Boxes of canned goods, medical supplies, clothing, and other essentials were stacked high in the truck beds. The vehicles were nearly overflowing with the supplies they had managed to salvage from the store. "We have to get a move on. It's going to be light soon," Brooks said. "This is the last of the food from the back," Jared replied. "Good, get it loaded up," Brooks instructed. Jared nodded as he pulled it over to one of the transport trucks, which was nearly overflowing. He worked with a few others to get the box on board, the truck's suspension groaning under the weight of their haul. As they worked, each of them flinched as Martinez fired off a shot, taking down a creature that was running towards them. The sharp crack of the rifle echoed across the parking lot, a sound that had become all too familiar over the past few hours. The corpse fell to the ground at the edge of the parking lot, joining a dozen others who had been unfortunate enough to find their way to the lot he was providing overwatch on. Martinez had positioned himself on top of one of the SUVs, giving him a clear view of the surrounding area and any approaching threats. "Damn fine shot, Martinez," Brooks called out. "Appreciate it, Sergeant," Martinez replied. "Okay, Sarge, we're loaded up and ready to roll," Hayes announced. "You heard the lady. Everybody get in," Brooks said. Brooks walked up to the driver's side door of one of the 3 trucks, watching as Jared got behind the wheel of the truck behind him, with Washington behind the wheel of the 3rd. The convoy was ready to move, loaded down with precious supplies that could mean the difference between life and death for the people at the stadium. Brooks leaned his head out the window, yelling out to the ones behind him. "Channel 12 on the radio," Brooks called. The others nodded as Brooks grabbed the CB radio from the dash, adjusting the frequency to the correct channel. "All right, this is going to be a bumpy ride," Brooks said into the radio. "Stay on my ass and keep the pedal down. I don't know what to expect when we hit the stadium, but with what I've heard on the radio the last couple of hours, it's going to be a shit show." "We'll be all right, Sarge. You'll get us there," Washington's voice came through the speaker. "Thanks for the vote of confidence, Washington," Brooks replied. Brooks reached down and started the truck up, letting it idle for a moment before picking up the radio again. The engine rumbled to life, the sound mixing with the similar noises from the other two vehicles. "All right, we're rolling," Brooks announced. Brooks hit the gas, the truck lurching forward and picking up speed as it headed to the road. He checked the side mirror, seeing the other two trucks keeping pace behind him, their headlights cutting through the early morning darkness. The sergeant made the turn onto the road, looking over to Corporal Hayes, who was in the passenger seat, her GPS device ready. "Keep that GPS handy because we might need it," Brooks said. "I already have 3 alternative routes plotted out," Hayes replied. "Thanks for reminding me why I put in for your promotion," Brooks said. Hayes let out a chuckle as the truck continued picking up speed, the convoy racing down the side street as the sun began poking up on the horizon. The dim morning light allowed them to see their surroundings for the first time, and the darkness had concealed a lot. Several wrecked cars were scattered on side streets, and more than a few creatures were running about. It wasn't overwhelming, but it was headed in that direction. The city was clearly deteriorating rapidly as more people succumbed to the infection. "Gotta take the next left," Hayes said. "I'm on it," Brooks replied. The sergeant made the turn onto a main thoroughfare, which was quickly descending into mayhem. There were several wrecks along the road, with dozens of creatures pressed against businesses on either side of the road. The morning light revealed the full scope of the devastation that had occurred overnight. A few of the buildings had broken entrances, allowing the creatures to come and go, presumably showing that whoever had been taking refuge inside hadn't lived to see the sun come up. Shattered glass and overturned vehicles told the story of desperate battles fought and lost. Brooks put that out of his mind as he kept the speed up, weaving in and out between cars on the street. The truck's heavy frame made it an effective battering ram when necessary, and he wasn't hesitant to use that advantage. As he went through the next intersection, several creatures rushed out into the road from a nearby fast food restaurant that was completely overrun. "Hang on!" Brooks yelled. Brooks gripped the wheel tightly, keeping it steady as the front end of the truck slammed into the creatures. The impact was jarring, bodies bouncing off the hood and windshield as the truck plowed through them. The occupants lurched forward as it lost speed, but were thrown back into their seats as the truck behind them hit their bumper, picking their speed back up. "Sorry about that, sir," Jared's voice came through the radio. The young civilian man spoke apologetically through the radio. Rather than respond verbally, Brooks extended his arm out the window, giving the man a thumbs up to let him know there were no hard feelings. "You wanted to flip him off, didn't you?" Hayes asked. "More than you know, Corporal," Brooks replied. "More than you know." The two of them shared a laugh as they kept pushing down the road. Up ahead, a few blocks, they could see a massive pileup blocking the road, with creatures swarming around the wreckage like ants on a dropped piece of food. "Options?" Brooks asked. "Turn right here," Hayes replied. Brooks hit the turn signal, getting the caravan to follow him as he made the turn. They pushed on for another mile before making another turn onto a residential neighborhood, hoping to avoid the worst of the destruction on the main roads. "Just keep going down this one for a few miles. It'll get us close," Hayes said. As they drove down the street, they could see people looking out from their front windows, confused by the sight of the military convoy racing through their neighborhood. Several people wore fearful expressions as creatures ran through the yards, chasing after anything that moved. The two soldiers put the thoughts of them out of their heads, focusing on the task at hand. There was nothing they could do for these people now, and stopping would only put their mission at risk. They rode in silence until they could see the stadium in the distance, half a mile up. "Mother of God," Hayes breathed. "My thoughts exactly," Brooks said. The stadium had become a hive of activity, with several trucks pulling into the loading dock and a few helicopters flying in and landing on the infield. There were also a long line of cars stretching into the distance, filled with people desperately seeking shelter from the nightmare that had consumed the city. The sight was both encouraging and terrifying. Encouraging because it meant their base of operations was still functional, but terrifying because of the sheer number of people who would be turned away from safety. "Get into the parking lot here. We'll take the long way around," Hayes suggested. Brooks nodded and did as instructed, pulling into the parking lot from the south side of the lot, which was devoid of cars and activity. They went around the far side of the stadium, stopping when they saw a makeshift barricade set up with several soldiers standing guard beside a door. "We need to get to the loading dock," Brooks yelled out from the window. The soldiers waved them through after recognizing the military vehicles. Within moments, they made their way around to the loading docks, parking just shy of it as soldiers scrambled to unload the trucks that were there. "Stay here in case they need you to move the truck," Brooks told Hayes. "Where are you going?" Hayes asked. "To find our fearless leader," Brooks replied. Brooks exited out of the truck, flinching as a rifle shot popped up from the raised walkway inside the stadium. He looked up to it to see a line of snipers standing at the ready, their weapons trained on various targets in the distance. The sergeant looked out towards the line of cars, spotting a handful of creatures running in between them, trying to get into the vehicles. A moment later, another shot went off, dropping a creature that had been climbing onto the hood of a sedan. "Jesus, this is insanity," Brooks muttered. Brooks shook it off, walking over to the docks, finding a soldier that was controlling the traffic of trucks. "Hey, 3 trucks worth of Supercenter goods over there," Brooks said. "I'll get them in next," the soldier replied. "Thanks, soldier," Brooks said. "Have you seen Captain Thompson?" "He's just inside the bay door," the soldier replied. Brooks nodded and made his way up onto the dock, trying his best to stay out of the way of the soldiers moving goods they were unloading from the trucks. As he entered the loading dock, he saw an impressive amount of goods that were being stacked in organized piles. "It's like we looted the town," Brooks observed. Brooks heard the captain's voice coming from his left and turned to see Thompson overseeing the operation. "Just be thankful that the entertainment team came through," Thompson said. "I'd hate to be stuck here with nothing but your stories to keep us entertained." "You'd be damn lucky if I become the resident storyteller," Brooks replied. The 2 men laughed, sharing a quick bro hug. It was good to see his friend alive and unharmed after the night they had all endured. "I'm glad you're all right," Thompson said. "We're not all right," Brooks replied. "The first team was wiped out, and Walsh took a bite on the arm." Becky was a few steps away, immediately perking up at the sound of someone being bitten. Her expression shifted from relief to concern as she processed the implications. "Someone's bitten?" Becky asked. "I know what you're going to say, and we're not kicking them out," Thompson said firmly. "On the contrary, Captain, several of the viral specialists from the college have requested someone meeting that description," Becky explained. "They feel as though being able to see what happens after a subject is bitten would be invaluable to their research." "First off, they're not a subject. They're one of my men," Thompson said. Becky nodded apologetically, recognizing that her clinical detachment had overridden her humanity for a moment. "My apologies, Captain. It's a defense mechanism on my part," Becky said. "It's the only way I can remain detached and do what needs to be done." "I understand," Thompson replied, "and I know it's not personal." "Thank you, Captain," Becky said. "That said, a stadium this size has to have a holding cell, right?" Thompson asked. "Yes, Captain, it does," Becky confirmed. "Good. You can tell the scientists that he'll be there for them shortly," Thompson said. "Thank you, Captain," Becky replied. "He's not going to like that," Brooks said. "Based on everything we've seen from those bites, I don't think he's going to be happy about anything," Thompson replied. "Speaking of not being happy," Brooks said. Brooks looked over to the door, where Private Martinez was escorting the 4 civilians inside. The group looked exhausted, but relieved to have made it to safety. "New friends of yours?" Thompson asked. "Yeah, about that," Brooks said. "You know we have an exclusive guest list," Thompson pointed out. "I also know you told me to do whatever I needed to do in order to get back here with the goods," Brooks replied. "Without their help, those trucks would be half full, so I cut them a deal." Thompson looked at the 4 of them for a moment, before reluctantly nodding his head. "Yeah, fine," Thompson said. "Just find some place to hide them from Becky until we're locked up." Brooks let out a chuckle, patting his friend on the shoulder in appreciation. "I'll take care of it, Cap," Brooks said. Thompson watched as his sergeant led the civilians out of the loading dock area, feeling a pang of regret as they passed. His instinct was to save everyone that was lined up outside trying to get in, but knew if he did, they would starve within weeks. Chapter 8. Private Martinez took a deep breath to steady himself as he looked through his scope. It took him a moment to adjust his aim to hone in on a creature that was pounding against the glass of one of the cars sitting at the far end of the stadium parking lot. The crosshairs settled on the ghoul's head as Martinez controlled his breathing, waiting for the perfect moment to take the shot. With a squeeze of the trigger, he sent the round through the ghoul's head, blood and brain matter splattering onto the windshield of the vehicle. He kept looking, focusing on the driver, his heart breaking as he saw the intense fear on their faces. The person inside was a middle-aged woman, her hands pressed against the glass as she watched the carnage unfold around her. "Why aren't they trying to get out of here?" Martinez asked. "Surely they know by now that we're not letting them in." Martinez looked over to the soldier next to him, who was lining up a shot of their own. The sniper was focused intently through his scope, tracking another target in the growing crowd of creatures below. The sniper didn't respond until he fired off a round of his own, the sound echoing across the stadium concourse. "I don't know Martinez, but with as many of those people that keep showing up, it's not going to be long before we won't be able to thin them out," the soldier replied. Several horns honked in the distance, drawing their attention to a new crisis developing in the parking lot. A new group of 20 creatures swarmed around several of the cars, finally getting the drivers to get moving. The sound of crunching metal could be heard at the stadium, as the vehicles collided with one another in their desperate attempts to escape. The scene was like something out of a nightmare. Cars were ramming into each other as drivers panicked, some vehicles spinning out of control as they tried to avoid both the creatures and other fleeing vehicles. Glass shattered and metal crumpled as the parking lot descended into vehicular mayhem. The snipers watched helplessly as the drivers attempted to escape, some of them successful, others less so. While the civilians attempted to flee, more creatures flooded the area, drawn by the noise and commotion. It was a vicious cycle that seemed to be spiraling out of control. "Do we keep trying to help them?" the soldier asked. Martinez looked at the scene, with the creature numbers growing to the point where they were completely surrounding some cars. The tactical situation was deteriorating rapidly, and ammunition was becoming a precious resource. He shook his head softly. "If you see an opportunity to help, do it, but don't waste any more ammo," Martinez said. The soldier nodded as he went back to looking through his scope, searching for clear shots that would make a difference. Martinez grabbed his radio, clicking it on to report the situation to command. "Captain, I think it's time," Martinez said. "How bad is it out there?" Thompson's voice crackled through the radio. "Bad enough that the civilians are trying to flee," Martinez replied. "Copy that," Thompson said. Thompson clicked the radio off before turning to Becky and Diane, the three of them standing in the security office. The room was filled with monitors showing different angles of the stadium, both interior and exterior views. They switched some of the cameras to the exterior ones, getting a better look at what Martinez had called to warn them about. It didn't take long for them to realize the stadium had become a hotspot of creature activity. The parking lot looked like a war zone, with vehicles scattered everywhere and groups of creatures roaming between them like predators hunting for prey. "Captain, make the call," Becky said. "Lock this place down." "How are we on the VIPs?" Thompson asked. Becky let out a frustrated grunt as she pulled out her clipboard, flipping through a list of the VIP targets. The pages were covered with names, addresses, and status updates, with most entries marked as either secured or en route. "It looks like we have about 90% of them inside safely," Becky reported. The captain contemplated for a moment, staring at the scene unfolding in the parking lot on the monitors. The weight of command was heavy on his shoulders as he made a decision that would seal the fate of everyone still outside the stadium walls. Finally, he nodded. "Okay, let's lock it down," Thompson said. Becky leaped into action, grabbing the radio off the desk, speaking forcefully into the microphone with authority. "Everyone is to immediately retreat inside the stadium perimeter," Becky announced. "Every door needs to be secured and locked down. Do it now and report." Within moments, soldiers began replying on the radio that their positions were secure. The responses came in rapid succession as teams throughout the facility confirmed they had sealed their assigned entrances. As they did, Becky handed the radio over to one of the soldiers manning the security desk. "Check them off and confirm via camera," Becky instructed. "Yes, ma'am," the soldier replied. The soldier put the radio on the desk between himself and another soldier at the station. The two of them went to work, alternating reports, checking them as they came in. Their screens showed various camera feeds as they visually confirmed each secured position. "They can handle this. Let's step outside so we can talk," Thompson said. The three of them stepped out of the security office, walking over to the outer railing on the stadium. They were elevated, able to look down at the parking lot that was descending into mayhem. The view from this height gave them a clear perspective on just how bad the situation had become. The three of them soaked it in for a moment before shaking it off and beginning to talk. The sounds of distant screams and engine noises drifted up from below, making it difficult to concentrate. "So lay it out for me, Becky. How are we looking?" Thompson asked. "Honestly, better than I thought we would be," Becky replied. "I'm glad we could exceed your expectations," Thompson said. "Pump the brakes there, cowboy. We're better than I thought we would be, but we're not where we need to be," Becky warned. "We've unloaded 30 truckloads of stuff over the last few hours," Thompson pointed out. "We have to at least be close, right?" "Do you know what close gets you in situations like this, Captain?" Becky asked. "It means some people are going to starve unless we play this right." "It just means we ration harder until we're up and running," Thompson said. "I'm glad you're on board with that, because that's definitely on the menu," Becky replied. "Well, we'll manage," Thompson said. "How are we looking on the self-sustaining front?" "We hit expectations," Becky reported. "Every one of the teams I sent out for growing supplies made it here safely. I already have people working on getting those set up. I'll know more by this evening, but I'm optimistic." "If you're optimistic, then I'm ecstatic," Thompson said. "I do have a bit of bad news, however," Becky said. "Now that scares me," Thompson replied. "Don't worry, it's unrelated to our situation here," Becky assured him. Thompson gave Becky a confused look, not sure of what to make of the statement. "I'm almost afraid to ask," Thompson said. "Throughout the night I've been in touch with several people at the base," Becky explained. "They were coordinating rescue flights around the city, getting VIPs here when driving wasn't an option. Now, based on the way we left things when we started this mission, I was expecting to have operations run until noon, which was when the last plane was due to take off from the base." Thompson looked down at his watch, seeing it wasn't quite 9:30 yet. The timeline didn't match up with what Becky was describing, and that discrepancy sent a chill down his spine. "Are you saying they've gone silent 2.5 hours early?" Thompson asked. "It's worse than silence," Becky replied. "Every flight that's come out of the base has been flying south. I borrowed a spotter to have them keep an eye on the flight path. After losing contact with them an hour ago, he hasn't spotted a single plane." "Yeah, that's definitely not good," Thompson said. Before they continued, Becky's radio crackled to life with an incoming transmission. "Becky, do you copy?" came the voice. "Speak of the devil," Becky said. "It's my spotter." Becky grabbed her radio, clicking it on to respond to the transmission. "What do you have for me, soldier?" Becky asked. "I relocated to the top of the stadium, trying to get the best vantage point I could," the soldier reported. "I haven't seen any planes taking off, but 2 attack helicopters are headed into downtown." The trio exchanged confused looks with one another before Thompson pointed to a stairwell a few yards away. "We're coming to you, soldier," Becky said. The three of them moved quickly, running up the stairs to the top level of the stadium. Their footsteps echoed in the concrete stairwell as they climbed, each step taking them higher above the unfolding crisis below. They ran around the outer rim until they were looking in the direction of downtown, which was several miles away. While they were elevated, they didn't have a great vantage point to see downtown, only able to see the tops of some of the taller casino hotels. The Las Vegas skyline stretched out before them, normally a glittering testament to human ambition, now seeming fragile and vulnerable. "I can't see the helicopters," Diane said. Becky grabbed her radio again, keying the microphone to contact their spotter. "Soldier, where are they? We can't see them," Becky asked. "I don't know, ma'am. They got real low when they got close to downtown," came the reply. A few moments later, they saw giant plumes of smoke and flames rising into the air from downtown. The explosions bloomed like deadly flowers against the morning sky, sending massive columns of black smoke billowing upward. A few seconds later, the low rumblings of the explosions reached their ears, the sound rolling across the desert like thunder. "Jesus Christ, did you guys just blow up downtown?" Diane asked. The two women looked to the captain, who was just as bewildered as they were. The sight of his own military conducting what appeared to be bombing runs on American soil was almost incomprehensible. "Apparently we did," Thompson said. They continued staring at the scene, watching as the smoke slowly descended back to the ground. The implications were staggering. If the military was bombing populated areas, the situation had deteriorated far beyond what any of them had imagined. As they watched, Becky's radio crackled to life again. A different soldier's voice came through. "Becky, you need to turn to channel 4, the voice said. "Someone's trying to get in touch with you." Becky was confused but complied with the request. She adjusted the radio frequency, wondering who could be trying to reach them on an alternate channel. She paused for a moment before clicking the button. "This is Becky. Who is this?" she asked. "Is this the stadium?" came a female voice. "Yes, I'm at the stadium. Who is this?" Becky replied. "I got a bus full of VIPs and we're headed your way," the voice said. "You better get ready because we're going to be coming in hot." The sound of loud crunching metal could be heard coming over the line, followed by a string of curses before the line went dead. The transmission cut off abruptly, leaving them with nothing but static and the ominous implications of what they'd just heard. "Can you hear me? Are you still there?" Becky asked. No response. Becky turned to the captain, who gave her a nod. The situation was evolving rapidly, and they needed to be ready for whatever was coming their way. "Get the troops on high alert. Our day isn't over yet." The end.